What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric. That's my co host, Will. And today we are going to be diving back into the 2024 NFL draft class, specifically talking about the quarterbacks. We're going to go through a top 5 rankings for you guys for this upcoming draft class. And we're also probably going to talk through a couple honorable mentions that we have along the way. But before we get into it, Will, you got anything to say to the people?
Absolutely. Before we get started, guys, make sure you guys do all that great YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. You guys have been doing a great job of it lately. We want to keep that momentum going, so keep hitting that subscribe button. And also hit that like button. It's absolutely free, and it's the best way to get our stuff out there in the YouTube algorithm. So with that being said, I think we can go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to start at the top. I think based on last week's video, if you guys saw that, you probably know what's coming at the top of this video. But Will, I'm gonna throw to you. Who is your number one quarterback in this upcoming class?
It's just about as easy as they come right now, at least. It's Caleb Williams from USC. Pretty simple. The reigning Heisman winner, of course, after throwing 4,537 yards and 42 passing touchdowns and 10 more rushing touchdowns last year. His production's been amazing. He's always been standing out as the premier, quarterback one for the last couple of years, including this year. The only person who's been sort of challenging him for that spot is Drake May, and the difference in talent between those two, at least, especially on an improvisational level, couldn't be further apart. But yeah. I know, Eric, this is one of your guys. I know you love this guy, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and go through this one right here.
Yeah, I have a fair amount to say, so excuse my rambling for a second here. If you guys watched our video last week on his performance versus Notre Dame, we kind of highlighted some of the things that he struggled with, some of the kind of nitpicky issues in his game. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more. I don't want to spend a ton of time on the positives because we all know what he can do, but I want to make sure to balance it out so it doesn't seem like I'm just shitting on him. So pros, obviously incredible arm talent, like unreal arm talent, not just from a strength and accuracy perspective, but also the ability to throw with power and accuracy from any arm slot, any body position. Crazy. Mobility and escapability. He's probably not in the same tier of like world-class athletes as like Anthony Richardson or Lamar Jackson are, but he has really good athleticism, and that paired with his spatial awareness and understanding of defensive pursuit angles, leverage, and stuff like that make him incredibly difficult to sack and a really big problem in the open field as well. Those two things combined make him capable of plays that truly, like, only a handful of dudes on the planet can even dream of. And so I think that's kind of where this talk of him being a generational prospect or the best that we've seen since like a Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck come from. And in a certain sense, that's absolutely warranted. But he has that label for very different reasons than those two guys. Luck especially was considered like a true can't-miss prospect. And it was because we had seen him perfectly execute a pro-style offense at Stanford for years. Everything he did, you could easily see translating to the NFL. Now, he was physically gifted too. I don't want to, get it twisted, but not in the same way that Caleb is. He's obviously in a different class. But the thing that I want people to understand is that Caleb is generational in the sense that his physical abilities make his ceiling virtually limitless, but he's definitely not a can't-miss prospect. And so to kind of dive into that a little bit, the reason being is that all of that ability makes him truly one of a kind when out of structure, but it only really matters if he's also elite when within structure. And I'm not comparing him directly to these guys, but that's why guys like Malik Willis, Zach Wilson, or even Marcus Mariota aren't starting quarterbacks right now.
Johnny
and guys
Manziel.
like Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, Johnny Manziel too. Perfect example. But yeah, guys like Jimmy G and Jared Goff are starting quarterbacks. Like in the NFL, you have to be able to execute the play that's drawn up for you, or else you're not going to make it. And so what I've seen from Caleb is that he can do that. He's clearly really smart. He can make it through his progressions. He's more than capable mentally of executing plays. I just don't think he always trusts it. He definitely holds on to the ball too long, which isn't entirely his fault. We talked about that last video as well. The offense is predicated on him doing that. But sometimes he has to see a player open instead of throwing with anticipation. He can get antsy in clean pockets and run into trouble that wasn't really there. I see him lean on his athleticism too early and too often sometimes, which isn't, again, entirely his fault. He has to play hero ball in that USC offense. But the truth is, like, he's not always going to be the best player on the field come Sundays in the NFL, and so that's not always going to work for him. I think the guys at the NFL Stock Exchange in their video when they talked about this quarterback class put it really well in saying that he tries to play out of structure even when within structure sometimes. Like things get too chaotic unnecessarily, which can lead to, on one hand, highlight reel plays, crazy, wild difference-making stuff that helps his team, or the opposite end of the spectrum where it can lead to games like he had against Notre Dame where he struggles and turns the ball over a ton. So a quick stat to kind of emphasize how he is really living on the razor's edge and how unsustainable that style of play can be is that last year he was literally the highest graded quarterback in the entire FBS when pressured. This year so far, he's the 5th lowest passing grade in all of college football when pressured. Huge difference. Same player, same system. It's just like that's the style of play that we're dealing with, and it's not always going to be the same for him. So all that being said, he's still the top quarterback in this class. Easily for me, he's still the 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts. And if he gets paired with the right coach that allows him to showcase those crazy abilities while also reining him in enough that he can play calm and in rhythm while in structure, like there is no ceiling. He could be anything. He could be Patrick Mahomes plus. But I just want people to be aware that there is a flip side to that coin, and picking him isn't entirely without risk.
I think that is a great point to make. I think that, like we said, in terms of improvisation and creativity, he's up there with the best of them. But like, you don't always need that to be the case. You need guys who are going to go out there and get the job done at the end of the day. Like you said, guys like Jimmy Garoppolo who are still finding jobs in the league, and even though they aren't the most physically talented guys in the world.
Right.
But with that being said, that's actually going to roll us perfectly into the next guy I have on the list, which is Drake May. He's somebody who I feel like does operate really well within structure. I feel like he is pretty disciplined. He's got the size to go along with. He's like 6'4", 220. He's very athletic, so he does still work well outside of structure and in structure. I feel like he's a good mix of operational utility and, your own athleticism as well. You know what I mean? So,
yep.
And in terms of quarterbacks we've seen succeed recently who are built like that, like you said, C.J. Stroud this year is a perfect example of operational utility meeting physical ability and then seeing that on the field and seeing what that can happen, at least early on in the career. And out of all the quarterbacks, that was how we kind of touted C.J. Stroud as the most NFL ready, the most poised, the most disciplined, the most operationally sound out of everybody. And I feel like in terms of the quarterback class this year, I think Drake May is sitting in that spot where he's just probably going to be the most consistent out of these guys. Like Caleb Williams, the ceiling is the sky. Drake May, the ceiling, probably the top floor of the penthouse, but still a pretty good ceiling to have. You know what I'm saying? So I love Drake May at that number 2 spot. I think he's going to be a UNC quarterback that does work out in the NFL at a pretty high level, and I'm excited to see him play at the next level. I think one of the biggest things we were worried about was his discipline coming into this year, and he's definitely quelled a lot of those concerns. He had one bad game, I believe, pretty recently, but still was able to bounce back pretty well the following week. So I like Drake May a lot in the number 2 spot.
Yeah, I think you put that really, really well. I completely agree. He is my number 2 quarterback as well. To me, it's like if you were creating a player in Madden, you could take Justin Herbert, but move the arm talent sliders down just a little bit, and then move like the rushing ability and the rushing tendencies up a little bit, and that gives you Drake May. That's kind of how I see him.
Yeah.
So yeah, but exactly what you were talking about, like the CJ Stroud comparison I thought was good as well, but he even has like higher rushing tendencies than Stroud does. So from a dynasty fantasy perspective, I think that gives you a little bit more upside. I think his arm talent is probably slightly better than Stroud's as well. In my pros category, I had, he's got a big arm. He's capable of throwing off platform, not at Caleb's level, but, better than basically anybody else in the class. Throws with great anticipation, like capital A anticipation. The hitting in between zones before his receiver comes out of breaks, before his receiver, really uncovers himself. Like he throws people open. It's so impressive what he's able to do with the football. And like you mentioned, which is really important, he has proven to me that he can play well within structure. The only real cons that I have for him are pretty nitpicky. And it's just that sometimes he gets overconfident in his arm talent, in what he's capable of doing, and makes throws that are a little too risky. And that sometimes he's not super consistent in being able to identify and avoid pressure. But really, that's all that I had for flaws on him. He's really clean in his game. Completion percentage super high, quarterback rating super high. Like this is a safe player and fairly high upside player as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, especially when we were talking about like landing spots, and I don't know, man, I've been thinking about it a lot. That Vikings landing spot for Drake May would just be beautiful. I'm gonna keep praying on that and try to manifest it. But hey, I don't think the Vikings are gonna have that high of a pick to even be able to do that.
Yeah, too bad they just beat the 49ers
Yeah.
last night, or at least as of recording this, it was last night. So yeah, I don't know that that's going to be the case now.
Yeah, they fucked it up, but hey, we're gonna see.
All right, so for me, and I'm assuming for you as well, those guys are in a tier by themselves, yeah?
Absolutely. Everybody else, it was not tough picking the next three, but it was like they're a lot closer together than trying to pick the
Yes.
other two, for sure.
Yeah, completely agree. So we move into a tier 2 here. Who is your third quarterback in your 2024 rankings?
After a good amount of deliberation, I decided to go with J.J. McCarthy in this spot from Michigan. I just feel like his play has been good. I feel like there have been some lapses, of course, like against Bowling Green. I believe he struggled this year.
Yep.
But so far, up on the season, 1,799 yards, 18 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions on 78% completion. That's pretty good right there. He shows, pretty elite creation ability. He has a loose arm that's capable of hitting tight windows, and I feel like he does have a pretty good rushing value as well. Not as good as some of the other guys, but still pretty up there as well. But he just has everything he needs to be a physical starter at the NFL level, I feel like. And especially recently out of his game against Michigan State kind of showed that he can be really successful operationally as well. He's shown composure in the pocket, pretty good anticipation as well, and pretty good accuracy. So I feel like if he continues this level of play throughout the rest of the season, he's going to start to enter that conversation where he's going to definitely push up draft boards. A lot of these guys, I feel like we kind of valued the running back class a lot in this class, but the quarterbacks have been showing up this season, and they've been kind of popping up, and this guy is definitely one who's shown a good level of consistency this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that the fall off from the running backs might be offset by the improvement of the rest of this quarterback class. Yeah, I had a lot of the same things to say about McCarthy's game. I think there's still a lot to be learned. Like you mentioned, if he can continue this level of play throughout the season, I think that's going to be really important, because so far they haven't really played many opponents of consequence. It's been a fairly easy schedule. He has a great offensive line and a dominant run game that make it so he doesn't have to play hero ball. Like, it's not all on him to win games. What we do know about him is that he can throw one hell of a fastball. He's got some serious velocity in that arm. Although I do think that might be close to all he has right now. Obviously that's something that can develop, but he seems to struggle a bit when throws require touch, or he has to layer it over the linebackers or something like that. That's not really his strong suit right now. And we know also, like you said, he has viable athleticism to make plays with his legs. But outside of that, there's a lot of question marks. Luckily, he's currently only 20 years old, so there's still a lot of room left to grow. And I do think that there's some guys behind him that I'm sure we'll talk about that are definitely more experienced and probably more NFL ready at this moment. But in terms of potential and just, you want to see guys perform well at a young age, like I think that's why he's at number 3 for me as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And like you said, again, these setups are kind of just rolling perfectly into the next people because, like you said, there's guys with more experience who we feel like could, be more NFL ready. I feel like this guy at number 4 is one of those guys. We got Michael Penix Jr. for Washington. He's just had a really, really, really good season. He's been shooting up draft boards. He's a Heisman frontrunner right now, especially after Caleb Williams kind of dropped that performance against Notre Dame. He's definitely picked up in that. So far, stats on the season, 2,576 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But his team's undefeated. He's at the top of the Pac-12. And the only issue I really, really see with Michael Penix, because I feel like in terms of him as a quarterback, he can make just about all the throws you want him to make. He makes good decisions. He's tough. He's got great vision. He's aggressive when he throws the ball, so he's not afraid to make plays as well. But his injury and health history can be a bit of a concern for some teams. We got 2 torn ACLs and a shoulder issue, which may scare some teams off of it. But if he's able to check out for some teams, there's not a whole lot of arguments for him to not be a first-round pick or at least a high-end talent in the NFL at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree. We didn't set this up. We had separate lists and hadn't talked about what our lists were going to be, but I also have Michael Penix Jr. sitting at number 4. As we talked about, really experienced, bit of an older prospect at 23 years old. similar to McCarthy in that I think he's more comfortable throwing gas, like throwing fastballs, than he is with touch, but he's more developed in that aspect than McCarthy is. Also in a similar situation in terms of supporting cast. He has a really good offensive line and fantastic wide receivers around him. So he doesn't have to necessarily play hero ball. It's not all on him, but he's definitely been playing great, and he's a reason why Washington is moving up in the college football rankings. Had a great performance against Oregon and outdueled Bo Nix. So I thought that was really good to see. I like him, but he gives me some kind of Hendon Hooker vibes. Like the massive injury history, like you mentioned, very similar. He's an older prospect, like I talked about. And they're both guys that didn't really put it together until really late in their college careers. Like prior to kind of midway through the season last year, he wasn't on the NFL radar like as this top quarterback prospect. And he just recently was able to do that as a fifth-year senior, I believe. So that gives me a little bit of pause. But I mean, if he gets selected in the first round, that quells a little bit of those concerns. It's just something worth noting.
Absolutely. I think, if he continues to keep playing at this high of a level, it's kind of hard to pass up on him. But I do see, like you said, the concerns. But we've seen some people blossom late who's come into the NFL and succeeded. Like I believe Joe Burrow was a senior when he finally hit the radar and became that first overall pick that he was. So, yeah. It's like you said, I want to see how he continues to progress. But again, I feel like we had another great segue here to go into the next one because we just mentioned them again. But we got Bo Nix at number 5 for me. So I feel like, he struggled early on at Auburn for sure. He was first put on my radar by Cam Newton, who was like, yeah, Bo Nix is the truth. Y'all need to keep an eye out for him. And then he struggled and I was like, what is Cam Newton talking about? But ever since he got to Oregon, he has been a changed man, honestly. He's more in control of just his play style himself, his physical talent. I feel like he could end up being, not an early round candidate. Yeah, I'd say an early round candidate. I'm not sure how early, though. We'll talk about that later. But, he's one of the most dynamic running quarterbacks and off-script quarterback threats in, NCAA college football. He's quick, flexible. He's very good at operating in short areas. He's got great arm strength as well and flexibility for velocity off the platform as well. And I feel like on the operational side of things, he could be a great NFL starter, or at least a quality NFL starter. Week 7, I feel like was a pretty big checkpoint for him against, like you said, going up against Michael Penix. And of course they didn't win, but still 33 for 44, 337 yards and 2 touchdowns, nothing to shake a stick at all. He definitely still was operating at a very high level, and still operating at a level of efficiency that we haven't really seen ever either. Not ever, but I'm stumbling over my words right now. What I want to say is Bo Nix is playing like a different man here at Oregon. He's playing at a high level. He's operating at a very efficient level, 78.4% efficiency so far on the season, 2,000 yards as well, 19 touchdowns, only 1 interception. So he has been able to turn down that turnover problem that he used to have as well. I just feel like Bo Nix has came a long way. There's a lot of age concerns I've seen from people, a lot of jokes on Twitter, Bo Nix has been in college since forever, and he has. He played against Justin Herbert, who's been in the NFL for quite a minute now. But I do feel like Bo Nix could come into the league and make some sort of an impact on the team. At least at the level that he's playing at, teams may value him pretty highly.
Yeah, I absolutely want to give him the credit that he deserves. He's had a huge turnaround in his career. He looks great at Oregon. I don't have him at my number 5. I have a little bit more concern, like you said, older prospect, and a little bit different path than Michael Penix, because I think they're both 23. But Penix was in a situation where his first college stop, he just wasn't given the opportunity to be the starter, and then had 4 season-ending injuries in a row, and then finally ended up at Washington healthy, and now has shown that he can do it. Whereas Bo Nix, has been the starter, has had the opportunity, and showed that he wasn't really ready for it. He wasn't as good as advertised in the beginning, and has grown, in his 5 years in college football or whatever it is.
At least.
So, I'll give him the credit that he deserves, but I don't have him at my number 5. I'm a little bit further down on him. But again, segue-wise, another kind of questionable guy. I was having a really hard time picking who to put in this 5th spot. For me, it's going to be Quinn Ewers. I have a hard time giving up on him, man. He's so talented. He's got such impressive arm talent. But I also have to acknowledge he's really inconsistent and erratic in terms of his accuracy as a passer. And he's one of the guys that I think has the biggest range of outcomes depending on the coaching that he gets. Like with really good coaching, I think he could be a really solid NFL starter. But with mediocre to bad coaching, like he might never see the field. Like, Will Levis got drafted with the first pick in the second round, decent draft capital, can't beat out Malik Willis right now. Like Quinn Ewers could go down a similar path. And also, he could be drafted later than that and just never have the expectation. There's a lot of question marks there, but I think that he's one of the more talented quarterbacks in this group. Like, I just from strictly an arm talent perspective, I'd put him probably right behind Caleb Williams and Drake May, and in front of the other guys that we have on the list. You got to see him put it all together, which he hasn't been able to do so far throughout his career, and that's why he's down at 5. But there's a bunch of names that were in that conversation. So with that being said, I'd like to hear who some of your kind of honorable mentions were, some guys that might have been in the mix for you at the bottom end of this rankings list.
Well, one of them was definitely Quinn Ewers. He's somebody I've been kind of going back and forth with the 5 spot. It's been between him and Bo Nix for me. And like you said, he can make just about every throw on the field that you need him to make. His arm angles are crazy. The arm talent is crazy. But in terms of consistency, I'd like to see that be a little bit better, like decision-making and mechanics. But other than that, let me see other people I have on here. I have Shedeur Sanders if he is to enter the draft, just because people didn't think he was going to be as productive as he is in his first year at the Power 5 level, and he has been. Obviously, the team is kind of struggling. I don't really see it as likely that he's going to declare for the draft this year, unless like something turns around, he becomes a super highly touted prospect. I just don't see his ego letting him declare for the draft this year. But
I agree.
In terms of productivity, I think he's up there with some of the best of them. I also like Jaden Daniels from LSU. I feel like he's risen up a lot of boards as well. Bit of a sleeper prospect, but so far this season, he's been doing extremely well. He's throwing 73% on the season, 25 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He also has 5 touchdowns on the ground, so he's been out there balling for LSU. And also the quarterback for FSU. Why am I forgetting his name right now?
Jordan Travis.
Yeah, I feel like he's been playing pretty well this year as well. This guy's like Spencer Rattler. I don't really have a whole lot of stats in front of me, but just wanted to name some guys that deserve some love as well. But who do you have on your honorable mentions list?
I had a lot of the same names. Shedeur was on there, but again, I'm in agreement with you that he's probably going to stay in college. Jaden Daniels was definitely in the mix for that number 5 spot. A similar situation to Penix, Nix, Ewers, where it's taken him a little while to rise to the occasion, but now that he's here, he is balling, and he's dangerous as a runner. Like, some of these guys have the ability with their legs, a little bit of athleticism. Jaden Daniels can make guys miss in a phone booth. He's nasty in the open field and has shown a ton of improvement as a passer this year. Did you got something to add?
He just seems like the perfect guy for like the Patriots to draft and start him at running back or wide receiver. But
yeah, they gotta see through Malik Cunningham first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jaden Daniels was definitely in the mix. And then one of my favorite kind of sleeper guys that I think is probably going to get drafted late day 2, early day 3, and could be a difference maker if in the right situation, KJ Jefferson, quarterback from Arkansas. If you haven't seen him, if he's not on your radar, huge, like massive dude. I want to say he's like 6'3 or 6'4", 250. He's fucking built. He's a beast as a runner, and that's kind of how he started his career. He wasn't a very good passer, but he's really developed each year. He's improved a ton in that category. And I think he's like mentally there as well. I think he gets through his progressions. He can understand an NFL style offense if given the opportunity. He's still got strides to make. He's a developmental guy, but I think he again, the case with a lot of these dudes, if given the opportunity, if given the right coaching staff, could blossom into something, special.
No, I love that pick. I didn't know he was that big, though. That is pretty massive.
Let me make sure I'm not overstating it. KJ Jefferson. How big is KJ Jefferson? He's 22, 247 pounds, 6'3". This dude is massive.
Damn. God damn, they got Darnell Washington at quarterback.
Bro, him and Raheem Sanders both at 250 out of the backfield.
No, crazy. Who do you dog? I'm the defensive line. I'm tired. I don't want to hit them anymore.
Facts. But yeah, so that'll round things out for us. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. Like Will mentioned at the top of the show, leave a comment. Let us know who your top 5 would be, if you agree, disagree with any of the names that we put in here, if we left anything out in terms of our evaluations of these guys, all that good stuff. Leave it in the comments below. We will absolutely respond. We love the engagement. And do a lot of other good YouTube stuff as well. Like Will said, we're a growing channel. We're trying to take some strides. You guys have been fantastic as of late, hitting that sub button, hitting the like button. But we want to keep that momentum going. So if you could do that for us, that would be great. And also hit that notification bell so you are kept up to date with all of our latest releases and stuff like that. We're going to continue to talk about the 2024 class. We're going to talk about some Dynasty, some redraft as well. So stay in the loop. But yeah, Will, you got anything to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, make sure you guys check out those links down in the description below as well to all of our sponsors over at Dynasty Owner. You can check out our sponsors at Do Numbers for some cool merch, hoodies, stuff like that. Eric's wearing one over there too, you know what I'm saying? Go check out the merch. Also, make sure you guys check out that link for link to our Discord if you want to join that community, have a deeper discussion. We have guys in there who are always talking fantasy football all the time. It's a great little community we got over there, so check out that link in the description below if you want to join and be a part of that. But with that being said, if you guys made it this far into the video, as always, we love you, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.